My name is Ann Shores. I'm 29 years old and I'm an architectural designer living in Portland, Oregon. On most days, my life feels solid. I have a job I'm proud of, an apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River, and enough independence to make my own choices. But there's something you need to know about me, something that's defined every single day of my existence until very recently. I'm a twin. Not just any twin, an identical twin. Brenda Shores came into this world 11 minutes after me, and from that moment on, we were inseparable. We learned to walk holding each other's hands. We invented our own language before we could speak real words. On our 7th birthday, we refused to blow out the candles unless we did it at exactly the same time. People used to joke that we were two halves of the same person. I believed them. For 29 years, I believed that Brenda and I were woven together in a way that nothing could unravel. I was wrong. While I moved across the country to Portland to chase a career in design, Brenda stayed in Asheville, North Carolina, close to our parents, close to the life we grew up in. She became a real estate agent, started attending charity galas, joined the country club. She found her place in a world I'd left behind. I didn't think that mattered. I thought distance was just geography. I thought being twins meant we'd always be each other's person, no matter where we lived or who we became. Then, 4 months ago, Brenda called to tell me she was engaged. Todd Parker, old money, country club pedigree, the kind of family that still sends Christmas cards with embossed lettering. I was genuinely happy for her. I asked about the proposal, about the ring, about wedding plans. She was vague. "We're keeping it small," she said. "Intimate. You know how Todd's family is." I didn't know, but I said I understood. Weeks went by. I'd text her, "How's wedding planning going?" She'd reply hours later, "Crazy busy. Talk soon." I'd see posts on social media, Brenda at a bridal boutique, Brenda touring venues, Brenda laughing with bridesmaids I didn't recognize. I wasn't in any of those photos. I told myself she was just overwhelmed, that I'd get the details eventually, that my invitation was probably just delayed in the mail. Then I got the text. It came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing blueprints for a new community library. My phone lit up with Brenda's name. I smiled, thinking maybe this was finally the call about bridesmaid dresses or bachelorette party plans. Instead, I read, "Sorry, dear. This event is for close families only. Hope you understand. XO Brenda." I stared at those words until they blurred. Read them again. And again. Close families only. I'm her twin sister. I shared a womb with her for 9 months. We shared a birthday, a childhood, a face. We have the same blood, the same DNA, the same laugh when something strikes us as absurd. And she was telling me I wasn't close family. I sat there in my office, surrounded by designs for buildings meant to bring people together, and realized I'd been erased from the most important day of my sister's life. Not forgotten, not overlooked, erased on purpose. That's when I knew something had broken that I didn't know how to fix, or if I even should. If this story moves you, or if you've ever felt invisible to someone who should have seen you most clearly, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps stories like mine reach people who need them. The engagement announcement came on a cold January evening. I was curled up on my couch with a mug of tea, reviewing sketches for a residential project, when my phone buzzed with a FaceTime request. Brenda's face filled the screen, glowing in a way I hadn't seen in years. "Ann, oh my God, Ann, you have to see this." She thrust her left hand toward the camera, and even through the pixelated connection, the diamond caught the light like a small star. Todd proposed at the Biltmore estate. Can you believe it? There was a string quartet and everything. I felt a genuine surge of happiness. "Brenda, that's incredible. I'm so happy for you." I leaned closer to the screen, trying to see the ring better. "Tell me everything. When did this happen? Have you started thinking about the wedding?" Her smile flickered, just for a second. Oh, we're still figuring things out. We want to keep it intimate. You know how Todd's family is. I didn't know. I'd never met Todd's family. I'd only met Todd twice. Once when Brenda brought him to Portland for a weekend, and once at Christmas 2 years ago when I flew home. Both times, he'd been polite, but distant. The kind of person who shakes your hand instead of hugging you. Well, I'd love to help, however I can, I said, trying to sound enthusiastic. I've designed event spaces before. I know some great vendors if you need recommendations. That's sweet, Brenda said, her voice taking on a tone I couldn't quite place. But Todd's mother, Tricia, already has a planner, someone she's worked with for years. It's all very coordinated. Oh, okay. Well, just let me know if I should go, Brenda interrupted. Todd's calling. Love you, twin. The screen went dark before I could say it back. I sat there for a moment, staring at my reflection in the black mirror of my phone. There was a small knot forming in my stomach, tight and uncomfortable. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Brenda was engaged. She was busy. This was normal. But the knot didn't go away. 2 weeks later, I was scrolling through Instagram during my lunch break when I saw it. A story posted by Clara Silas, a girl Brenda and I had grown up with in Asheville. The image showed a bridal boutique, all white tulle and champagne glasses. In the mirror's reflection, I could see Brenda in a wedding dress, surrounded by 4 other women all laughing. I tapped through to the next story, another photo. Brenda holding up 2 different veils while the other women pointed and debated. The caption read, "Best bridesmaid duty ever. So honored to be part of this squad." I stared at the screen. Brenda hadn't mentioned going dress shopping, hadn't invited me, hadn't even told me she'd chosen her bridesmaids. I kept scrolling, my heart beating faster. There were more posts, older ones I'd somehow missed. An engagement party at someone's estate. Brenda and Todd cutting a cake, surrounded by people in cocktail attire. A bridal shower with a "She Said Yes" banner and a table full of gifts wrapped in silver paper. Venue tours with captions like, "Can't wait to say I do here" and "3 months to go." 3 months. I opened my text thread with Brenda. Our last conversation had been 2 weeks ago, right after the FaceTime call. I typed quickly, trying to keep my tone light. "Hey, twin, saw Clara's story. Looks like wedding planning is in full swing. Would love to catch up soon. Miss you." I watched the screen. The message showed as delivered. Then, a minute later, read. I waited. 1 hour passed, then 2, then 6. Finally, at almost midnight, my phone buzzed. "Super busy. We'll call when things calm down." That was it. No details, no invitation to be part of the planning, no acknowledgement that I'd been left out of every single milestone so far. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling of my bedroom. The knot in my stomach had grown into something heavier, something that made it hard to breathe. The call from my cousin Alfredo came 3 days later. I was at my desk finalizing a presentation for a client when his name flashed across my screen. "Hey, Alfredo," I answered, tucking the phone between my shoulder and ear. "What's up?" "Hey, Ann, quick question. Are you flying in for Brenda's wedding or driving? I'm trying to coordinate with some of the family, and I figured since you're coming from Portland, you might want to share a rental car or something." My hands froze on the keyboard. "What do you mean?" There was a pause. A long, terrible pause. "The wedding," Alfredo said slowly. "Brenda's wedding, in June." My voice came out strange, thin. "I haven't gotten any information about it." Another pause. This one even worse. "Oh," Alfredo said. "Oh, shit. You're her twin, so I just assumed." He trailed off, clearly realizing he'd stepped into something he didn't understand. "What's the date?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "June 22nd, at some estate in Asheville. Anne, I'm sorry. I thought you knew. It's fine," I said quickly. I'm sure the invitation got lost in the mail or something." We both knew that wasn't true. After we hung up, I sat perfectly still. June 22nd. 3 months away. There had been an engagement party, a bridal shower, dress shopping, venue tours, and I hadn't been invited to any of it, hadn't even been told. I picked up my phone and called Brenda. It rang 4 times, then went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Instead, I texted, "Alfredo mentioned June 22nd. I haven't gotten any wedding info. Can you send me details?" I watched the 3 dots appear, disappear, appear again. Finally, the next morning, a response came. "Anne, this is complicated. Todd's family has a very specific guest list. It's not personal." I read the message 3 times. Then I typed back, my hands shaking. "I'm your twin sister. How is this not personal?" The read receipt appeared immediately. Brenda had seen it, but no response came. Not that day, not the next, not the day after that. I checked my phone obsessively, hoping for an explanation, an apology, anything. But there was only silence. 1 week later, I was getting ready for work when my phone buzzed with a new message from Brenda. My heart leapt. Finally. She was going to explain to fix this. I opened the message. "Sorry, dear, this event is for close families only. Hope you understand. XO Brenda." I read it once, twice, 5 times. Close families only. I sank down onto my apartment floor, still holding my phone. Across the room, on my bookshelf, there was a framed photo of Brenda and me at age 7, dressed as matching witches for Halloween. Another of us at our high school graduation, caps tilted at the same angle, arms around each other. Another from our 25th birthday, blowing out candles on a cake we'd insisted on sharing. In every photo, we were together, inseparable. 2 halves of the same whole. I looked down at the message again. This event is for close families only. Close families. I wasn't close family. I was her twin, her mirror. The person who'd known her longer than anyone else on earth, and I wasn't close enough. Something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet, clean break, like ice splitting under pressure. I whispered to the empty room, to the photos on the shelf, to the sister who couldn't hear me, "I'm not imagining this. She's erasing me." And for the first time, I stopped trying to convince myself otherwise. I booked the flight at 2 a.m. I couldn't sleep, couldn't stop reading that text message over and over, couldn't silence the voice in my head that kept asking why. So I opened my laptop, found a flight from Portland to Asheville leaving in 9 hours, and clicked purchase before I could talk myself out of it. I didn't tell anyone I was coming, not my parents, not Brenda, not even Clara. My best friend who would have told me this was a terrible idea, because it probably was, but I needed to look my twin sister in the eye and hear her explain how I wasn't close family. I needed her to say it to my face. The flight felt endless. I stared out the window at clouds that looked like cotton pulled apart, and my mind kept drifting back. Brenda and me at 6 years old, learning to ride bikes in our driveway, refusing to let go of each other's hands even when we kept falling. At 12, finishing each other's sentences so often that our teachers separated us in class. At 16, lying on her bedroom floor, making a pact that we'd be each other's maid of honor someday, no matter what, no matter who we married, no matter where life took us. "Promise?" Brenda had said, holding out her pinky. "Promise," I'd said, linking mine with hers. I pressed my forehead against the airplane window and tried not to cry. When I landed in Asheville, the air was thick and humid, so different from Portland's crisp spring. I rented a car and drove through streets I used to know by heart, past the neighborhood where we grew up, past our old high school. Everything looked smaller than I remembered. Brenda's townhouse was in a new development on the north side of town, all brick facades and manicured lawns. I parked across the street and sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. Her silver sedan was in the driveway. Next to it, a black truck I recognized as Todd's. I took a deep breath, then another. Then I got out of the car and walked to the front door before I could change my mind. I rang the doorbell. Footsteps inside. The door opened. Brenda stood there in yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. For a split second, it was like looking in a mirror. Same face, same eyes, same freckle on the left cheekbone. Then her expression shifted. Her face went pale. "Anne? What are you doing here?" "You said this wedding is for close families only." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I'm your twin. I need you to explain that to my face." Brenda glanced over her shoulder, nervous. "Anne, you can't just show up like this. We're in the middle of what?" I stepped closer. "Planning a wedding I'm not invited to?" Todd appeared behind her, tall and broad-shouldered, his hand settling on Brenda's shoulder, like a claim. "Maybe this isn't the best time," he said, his voice smooth and controlled. "Brenda's had a stressful week. We can schedule a call to discuss." "No." I looked past him, into the townhouse. "I flew across the country. We're discussing this now." I didn't wait for permission. I walked past both of them, into the living room I'd only seen through FaceTime screens. The space was pristine. Cream-colored furniture, abstract art on the walls, a glass coffee table covered in wedding binders, fabric swatches, vendor contracts, and there, spread out like evidence, a seating chart. I moved closer, saw the tables laid out in neat circles, saw names written in elegant calligraphy, and there, on table 4, I saw my own name, Anne Shores, crossed out in red pen. My hand shook as I picked up the paper. "You had me on the list." I turned to face Brenda, holding up the seating chart. "Then you crossed me out. Why?" Brenda's eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Todd. "Brenda," I said, my voice breaking. "Why?" "Todd's mother thought it would be easier," she whispered. "Easier?" I repeated. "Easier than what? Easier than having your twin sister at your wedding?" "Easier than explaining," Todd said, his voice cold now. "My family has certain expectations, certain standards for—" "I don't care about your family standards," I snapped. "I care about my sister. Brenda, talk to me, please." Before Brenda could respond, I heard footsteps on the stairs. A woman descended into the living room like she was making an entrance at a gala. Mid-50s, blonde hair styled in perfect waves, wearing white linen pants and a silk blouse. Pearls at her throat, a champagne flute in her hand at 3 p.m. "Oh," she said, her eyes landing on me. "You must be the sister from Portland." I stared at her. "I'm her twin sister, yes." The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, this is awkward. Brenda, darling, I thought we agreed to handle this delicately." "Mrs. Fields," Brenda started, but the woman waved her off. "It's fine, sweetheart. I'll handle it." She turned to me, taking a delicate sip of champagne. "Anne, is it? I'm Tricia Fields, Todd's mother. I understand you're upset, but you have to understand. This wedding is a significant social event. The Parker family has a reputation to uphold in this community. We need guests who fit the narrative we're presenting." I felt something hot and sharp rise in my chest. "What narrative?" "We're identical twins." Tricia laughed, light and dismissive. "Identical in appearance, perhaps. But Brenda has cultivated the right connections, the right presence. She understands how to move in our circles. She paused, looking me up and down. "Well, you're very Portland, aren't you? Very independent. That works for you, I'm sure. But it doesn't work for us." I couldn't breathe. I turned to Brenda, desperate. "Say something. Tell her this is insane." Brenda looked at the floor. Her hands were trembling. Todd's hand tightened on her shoulder. "Brenda," I pleaded. She finally looked up at me, and her eyes were red. "Anne, I'm trying to build a life here, with Todd, with his family. I can't—" Her voice cracked. "I can't risk it." "Risk what?" I demanded. "Risk having a sister who loves you?" "Risk losing everything I've worked for," Brenda whispered. Tricia set down her champagne flute and stood, smoothing her skirt with practiced elegance. "Brenda has chosen her family now, and that family has standards. I'm sure you understand." The room went silent. I looked at Trisha, at Todd, at Brenda standing between them like she'd already made her choice. "We shared everything," I said quietly, looking only at Brenda now. "Every birthday, every milestone, every secret. We learned to walk together. We learned to talk together. I taught you how to parallel park. You held my hand when I got my wisdom teeth out. We promised we'd be each other's maid of honor." My voice broke. "And you're choosing her over me?" Brenda's tears spilled over, but she didn't move, didn't speak. Todd pulled her closer to his side and she let him. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. 15. Nothing. I set the seating chart back down on the coffee table. My name still crossed out in red. "I hope it's worth it," I said. Then I turned and walked out of the townhouse, past the perfect furniture and the wedding binders, and the life my sister had chosen without me in it. The North Carolina humidity hit me like a wall. I got into my rental car, closed the door, and sat in the silence. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. My phone buzzed. A text from Brenda. "Please don't make this harder than it already is." I stared at the message. Then I turned off my phone, started the car, and drove away. I checked into a hotel near the Asheville airport because I couldn't bear the thought of staying in that city any longer than necessary. The room was generic. Beige walls, floral bedspread, a landscape painting that could have been anywhere. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing the clothes I'd traveled in, and stared at my phone. My wallpaper was a photo of Brenda and me at age 10, gap-toothed and sunburned, arms slung around each other at the beach. We were laughing at something our dad had said, our faces so identical that even our parents sometimes had trouble telling us apart in photos. I couldn't look at it anymore. I opened my banking app, something I did every week to track my budget, to make sure I was staying on top of bills and savings. My eyes landed on the account I'd created 2 years ago, right around the time Brenda started getting serious with Todd. Brenda's wedding. $12,000. I'd been putting money away every month. $50 here, $100 there, sometimes more when I got a bonus at work. I'd imagined buying her something meaningful, maybe helping to pay for the honeymoon or contributing to the down payment on a house, or just giving her a check with a card that said all the things sisters say to each other on wedding days. I'd been saving for a wedding I wasn't invited to. Something inside me crumbled. Not the clean break from earlier. This was messier, rawer. I curled onto my side on the hotel bed, still holding my phone, and started to cry. Not quiet tears, not dignified tears. Deep, guttural sobs that came from somewhere I didn't know existed. The kind of crying that makes your ribs ache and your throat burn. I cried for the sister I'd lost, for the future I'd imagined that would never happen, for every memory that now felt tainted. Like maybe I'd been the only one who thought we were inseparable. I cried until I had nothing left. Then I dragged myself to the bathroom and turned the shower on as hot as I could stand. I stood under the water until the mirror fogged over and my skin turned red, letting myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The abandonment, the humiliation, the grief of losing someone who was still alive but had chosen to cut me out. And then, through the noise of the water and my own ragged breathing, a thought cut through, clear and sharp. She chose them. Now I choose me. I turned off the water, wrapped myself in a towel, and walked back into the room. My laptop was in my bag. I pulled it out, sat on the bed, and opened it. My hands were still shaking, but they were steadier now. I picked up my phone and called Clara Silas. Not the Clara from Asheville, but my Clara, my college roommate who'd become my best friend, the person who knew me as just Anne, not as half of a match set. She answered on the first ring. "Tell me you didn't fly there." "I did," I said, my voice hoarse from crying. "Oh, Anne." There was so much compassion in those 2 words that I almost started crying again. How bad was it? Worse than I imagined. I told her everything. The seating chart with my name crossed out. Trisha Fields and her champagne and her casual cruelty. Brenda's silence. Todd's hand on her shoulder like a leash. When I finished, Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "What are you going to do?" "I don't know." I looked at my laptop screen, still open to my banking app. I saved all this money for her, for a wedding I'm not invited to. $12,000. "Clara." "Then stop saving it for her," Clara said, her voice firm. "What would Anne want? Not twin Anne, not Brenda's sister, just Anne. What do you want?" I sat with that question. For 29 years, I'd defined myself in relation to Brenda. We were a unit, a pair. I'd never really thought about what I wanted separate from what we wanted. "I don't know," I whispered. "Then figure it out," Clara said gently. "You have $12,000 and no obligation to anyone but yourself. What would make you happy?" After we hung up, I sat there for a long time. Then I typed into the search bar, "solo travel destinations for healing." Articles popped up, lists of places designed for people who needed to disappear and find themselves again. Bali, Iceland, Peru, and then I saw it, New Zealand. I clicked on the link. Photos filled my screen. Mountains that looked like they'd been carved by gods. Lakes so blue they didn't seem real. Endless green hills and waterfalls and skies full of stars. It was the opposite of everything I was feeling. It was beautiful and wild and far away from Asheville, from Portland, from everything. I kept scrolling and found a guided tour company. 3 weeks in New Zealand's South Island, hiking, Milford Sound, Queenstown, stargazing into Capo. Small groups, experience guides, everything included. Departure date, June 15th, 1 week before Brenda's wedding. The cost was $11,800. I hovered my cursor over the Book Now button. My heart was pounding. This was insane. I didn't do things like this. I was the responsible one, the planner, the person who made spreadsheets before making decisions. My phone buzzed. A text from Brenda. "I know you're upset, but you'll understand someday. This is what's best for everyone." I read it once, then again. Best for everyone. Everyone except me. I clicked Book Now. The confirmation screen loaded. Then my email pinged. "Thank you for booking your New Zealand adventure. Your journey begins June 15th. My hands were shaking again, but this time it felt different. Not fear, not grief, power. I opened my text thread with Brenda, typed, "I do understand. You chose your path. I'm choosing mine." I hit send. Then, before I could second-guess myself, I blocked her number. I turned off my phone, closed my laptop, and booked a flight back to Portland for the next morning. When I got home, my apartment felt different, quieter, but not in a lonely way, in a way that felt like possibility. I made myself tea, sat on my couch, and opened Instagram. I scrolled through my photos until I found one of Brenda and me as kids, maybe 7 or 8 years old, arms wrapped around each other, matching smiles. I posted it with a simple caption. "Sometimes the person you thought would always choose you chooses something else, and that's when you learn to choose yourself." I didn't tag Brenda, didn't explain, didn't elaborate. I just posted it and logged out. Within an hour, my phone started buzzing with notifications. Messages from friends, from cousins, from people asking what happened, if I was okay, if there was anything they could do. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I pulled my suitcase out of the closet and started packing. Hiking boots, layers for unpredictable weather, a journal I'd never written in, my camera. My flight to Auckland left in 4 days. I hadn't told my parents. Hadn't told anyone except Clara. I was vanishing, just like Brenda had made me vanish from her wedding, from her life. But this time, I was choosing it. This time, I was disappearing into something, not away from it. I folded a sweater and placed it in my suitcase, and for the first time since that text message had shattered my world, I felt something that wasn't pain. I felt free. Have you ever had to choose yourself over someone you thought you'd never lose? Drop a comment below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone is the first step to healing. The plane touched down in Auckland after 15 hours in the air, and when I stepped outside the terminal, the first thing I noticed was the smell. Salt from the harbor mixed with something sweet and sharp. Eucalyptus, maybe. Or some plant I'd never encountered before. The air was cool and clean, and everything felt impossibly far from Asheville, from Portland, from Brenda. I took a breath that felt like the first real breath I'd taken in weeks. At the tour company's meeting point, I found my group, 12 strangers from around the world, all holding the same confirmation papers, all looking slightly jet-lagged and uncertain. Our guide was a Maori woman named Aroha, probably in her 50s, with kind eyes and a presence that made you feel immediately safe. "Welcome," she said, her voice warm and steady. "You've come a long way. This land heals if you let it, so let it." I checked into a small inn overlooking the harbor, climbed the stairs to my room, and turned my phone to airplane mode. Then I collapsed onto the bed and slept for 12 hours straight. When I woke, the sun was streaming through the window, and for a moment, I didn't remember where I was. Then it came back. New Zealand, the other side of the world, as far from my old life as I could get. The tour began with easy hikes. The Tongariro Alpine Crossing took us past emerald lakes that looked like someone had spilled paint across the landscape. Volcanic rock in shades of rust and black, steam rising from vents in the earth. I walked in silence, listening to the crunch of gravel under my boots, the wind moving through tussock grass, the occasional call of a bird I couldn't name. I didn't talk much. I just walked. At night, the group gathered for meals in lodges and hostels. I mostly listened. There was a German couple, both teachers, taking a sabbatical to figure out if they still wanted to be married. A solo traveler from Japan who shared haiku she'd written about the landscapes we passed through. A retired nurse from Canada who'd promised herself this trip after her husband died. No one asked if I had siblings. No one knew I was a twin. Here, I was just Anne. On the third day, as we sat around a fire after dinner, Aroha asked each person to share why they'd come to New Zealand. The German husband talked about needing perspective. The Japanese woman spoke about searching for beauty after loss. When it was my turn, I hesitated. Then I said simply, I needed to remember who I am without someone else. Aroha nodded like she understood completely. No one asked me to explain. On day 5, we took a boat through Milford Sound. The water was so still it looked like glass, reflecting the mountains that rose on either side like ancient sentinels. Waterfalls cascaded from cliffs so high they disappeared into mist before reaching the fjord. Seals basked on rocks, unbothered by our presence. The silence was cathedral deep, the kind that makes you feel small in the best possible way. I stood at the bow of the boat, wind in my face, salt spray on my lips, and for the first time in weeks, I realized I wasn't thinking about Brenda. I wasn't replaying the confrontation or wondering what I could have said differently or imagining her wedding happening without me. I was just here, present, alive. An older woman named Margaret from Scotland came to stand beside me. She'd been quiet most of the trip, but there was something about her that felt steady, grounded. "Running from something or running towards something?" she asked, her accent thick and musical. I smiled. "Both." She nodded. "That's usually how it works." On day 8, I made a mistake. I turned on my phone to download photos from my camera to back them up. The second it connected to Wi-Fi, it started buzzing. Notifications flooded the screen. 37 missed calls. Voicemails from my mother, my cousin Alfredo, even Clara. Text messages asking where I was, if I was okay, why I wasn't responding. My hands started shaking. I almost turned the phone off immediately, but something made me listen to one voicemail. My mother's voice, tight with worry and frustration. "Anne, where are you? No one has heard from you in over a week. Brenda is beside herself. The wedding is in 2 weeks. Whatever happened between you two, you need to fix it. Please call me back." Brenda is beside herself. I stared at the phone. Beside herself. Like I was the one who'd done something wrong. Like I was the one who'd excluded her, dismissed her, erased her. I deleted the voicemail. Then I deleted all of them without listening. I found Aroha sitting outside the lodge, drinking tea and watching the sunset. "Can you keep this until we're done?" I asked, holding out my phone. She took it without question. "Of course." "Thank you," I said. She smiled. "Sometimes we have to put down what's heavy before we can pick up what's light." In Rotorua, the air smelled like sulfur from the geothermal springs. Steam rose from the ground in ghostly columns. The group participated in a traditional pohiri, a Maori welcoming ceremony. We were invited into a meeting house, where elders spoke in Te Reo Maori and English about the land, about connection, about healing. At the end, Aroa gave each of us a small stone, smooth and dark. "Hold what you need to release," she said, "then give it to the earth." We walked to the edge of a geothermal spring, the water bubbling and hissing. One by one, people stepped forward, held their stones, and dropped them into the water. When it was my turn, I held the stone in both hands. It was warm from my palms. I closed my eyes. I thought about Brenda, about the seating chart with my name crossed out, about Trisha Fields and her pearls and her cruelty, about Todd's hand on Brenda's shoulder, about the text message. "This event is for close families only." I whispered, so quietly only I could hear. I release the need to be chosen by someone who can't see me. I release the version of me that only existed as half of something else. I opened my hands. The stone fell into the spring and disappeared into the steam. I stood there for a moment, watching the water churn and bubble. Then I turned and walked back to the group. Margaret squeezed my hand. I squeezed back. On day 12, we reached Lake Tekapo, a dark sky reserve where light pollution was almost non-existent. At midnight, Aroha led us to a field outside of town. We lay on blankets, staring up at the sky. I had never seen so many stars. The Milky Way stretched across the darkness like a river of light. Constellations I'd only seen in books were suddenly vivid and close. I felt impossibly small and somehow, at the same time, connected to something vast. Margaret lay on the blanket next to mine. "You know what's beautiful about stars?" she said softly. "They're all alone, millions of miles apart, but together they make something breathtaking." I turned my head to look at her. She was still staring up at the sky, a small smile on her face. "I spent 30 years thinking I needed my husband to be whole," she continued. "When he died, I thought I'd disappear too, but I didn't. I'm still here, still whole, just different." "I'm sorry," I said. "Don't be." She turned to look at me. Losing him taught me that I was never half of something. I was always whole. He was just someone I chose to walk beside. I looked back up at the stars, felt something shift inside me, not healed, not yet, but lighter, like I'd been carrying a weight I didn't realize was there, and someone had finally helped me set it down. On the final night, in Queenstown, I sat in a cafe overlooking Lake Wakatipu. The water was impossibly blue, surrounded by mountains that looked like they'd been painted onto the sky. I ordered a flat white and opened my journal for the first time since arriving in New Zealand. For a long time, I just stared at the blank page. Then I started writing. I came here to escape losing my twin. I'm leaving having found myself. Brenda chose a life that didn't include me, and for weeks that felt like the end of the world. But maybe it wasn't an ending. Maybe it was permission. Permission to stop defining myself by someone else's choices. Permission to be whole on my own. Permission to choose myself the way I always chose her. I don't know what happens when I go home. I don't know if Brenda and I will ever speak again, or if our relationship can be repaired, or if I even want it to be. But I know this. I'm not the same person who left Portland 3 weeks ago. That person was half of something. This person is whole. I closed the journal and looked out at the lake. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Tomorrow, I would fly home. The wedding would happen in 2 days, with or without my knowledge, with or without my blessing. But I wouldn't be sitting at home, devastated and alone. I would be landing in Portland, walking into my apartment and starting a life that was entirely, completely, unapologetically mine. I landed in Portland on June 23rd, one day after Brenda's wedding. The flight attendant announced the local time, and I did the math in my head. The ceremony would have been yesterday afternoon. By now, Brenda would be married, Mrs. Todd Parker. Part of the family that had standards I didn't meet. I turned my phone off airplane mode for the first time in 2 weeks. It started buzzing immediately. Notifications flooded the screen so fast I couldn't read them. 83 messages, missed calls, voicemails. My heart started pounding, that old instinct kicking in. Something's wrong. Someone needs you. You have to fix it. I scrolled through quickly. Most were from my mother, several from Alfredo, a few from numbers I didn't recognize. Then I saw one from Clara, my Clara, sent this morning. "Call me when you land. You need to hear this." I waited until I got to my car in the parking garage, sat in the driver's seat, took a breath, and called her. She answered on the first ring. "Where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for days." "It's been absolute chaos." "I was in New Zealand," I said. "I turned my phone off. What happened?" "What happened?" Clara laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Anne, the wedding was a disaster, like spectacularly bad." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" 2 days before the ceremony, some local journalist published an expose on the Parker family. Financial fraud, unpaid contractors going back years, a lawsuit from a nonprofit they'd supposedly been supporting, but were actually embezzling from. It went viral in Asheville social circles. I sat there, gripping the phone. What? "Half the guest list canceled," Clara continued. "People were calling the day before, the morning of, making excuses. The venue almost pulled out. Apparently, the Parkers owed them money from a previous event." And Trisha Fields had a complete meltdown at the rehearsal dinner, screaming at Brenda in front of everyone, saying she was bringing scandal into the family, that she should have managed the optics better. "Wait," I said. She blamed Brenda. "Oh, it gets worse. The wedding went forward because they'd already paid for everything. Well, what they could pay for. But only 70 people showed up instead of 200. The Parkers' entire social circle turned on them. People were taking photos, posting about it online. It was humiliating." I didn't know what to say. I'd imagined Brenda's wedding 1,000 times over the past 3 weeks. The perfect ceremony, the elegant reception, Brenda glowing in her dress, surrounded by the right people, while I was on the other side of the world, erased. This wasn't what I'd imagined. "There's more," Clara said. Todd's business partner pulled out of some major development deal, citing reputational concerns. And apparently Todd's trust fund is frozen pending the investigation. Trisha is losing her mind. She's been calling Brenda useless, saying she should have known, should have protected the family image. "That's insane," I whispered. "None of this is Brenda's fault." "I know, but Trisha doesn't care. She needed someone to blame, and Brenda's the easiest target." Clara paused. "Anne, Brenda's been calling me. She's a mess. She keeps asking if I've heard from you." My chest tightened. "What did you tell her?" "That I didn't know where you were," which was true. Clara's voice softened. "Are you okay?" "I think so," I said. "I'm different, but okay. Good. Because I have a feeling she's going to try to reach you." We hung up, and I sat in my car for a long time, staring at the concrete wall of the parking garage. Part of me felt vindicated. The family that had deemed me not good enough was falling apart. But another part, the part that had spent 29 years loving Brenda, just felt sad. I drove home, carried my suitcase up the stairs, and started unpacking. My hiking boots still had New Zealand mud on them. My journal was tucked between layers of clothes. I pulled it out, set it on my nightstand. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello? Anne, thank God, I've been trying to reach you for weeks." Brenda's voice, raw and broken in a way I'd never heard before. I said nothing. "Anne, are you there?" "Please don't hang up." "I'm here," I said quietly. "Everything fell apart." Her voice cracked. "The wedding was a disaster. Todd's family is imploding. The scandal, the investigation, everyone canceled, and Trisha—" She started crying. "Trisha is horrible, Anne. She's blaming me for everything. She says I should have known, should have done something. Todd just stands there and lets her talk to me like that." I closed my eyes, felt the old pull, the twin instinct to fix things, to show up, to be the person who made everything okay. "I know I hurt you," Brenda continued, words tumbling out between sobs. "I know I was wrong. I know I should have stood up to them, should have fought for you. But I need you now. I need my sister. I don't know what to do. I don't know who else to call." My hand tightened on the phone. For a moment, I was back in that hotel room in Asheville, crying on the bed, feeling like my world had ended. For a moment, I wanted to say yes, to get in my car and drive to the airport and fly to her. Then I remembered standing at the edge of that geothermal spring in Rotorua, the stone in my hands, the words I'd whispered. I released the need to be chosen by someone who can't see me. "Brenda," I said, my voice steady, "I'm sorry you're going through this. I really am. But I can't be the person you call when your choices fall apart." "What?" She sounded shocked. "Anne, you're my twin. You're supposed to be there for me." "I was," I said. "For 29 years, I was there for you. And you told me I wasn't close family." "I didn't mean—" "You did mean it. You chose Todd and his family and their standards over me. You let his mother tell me I wasn't good enough. You stood there and said nothing while I begged you to choose me." My voice didn't waver. "I spent 3 weeks in New Zealand learning to be whole without you, and I'm not going back. Anne, please." I hung up. My hands were shaking. I stared at the phone, half expecting her to call back immediately. When she did, I blocked the number. Then I turned off my phone completely. I made tea, the same kind I'd had in that cafe in Queenstown, stood by my window overlooking the Willamette River, and watched the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My chest felt tight, but not in a bad way, in a way that felt like strength, like boundary, like choice. I thought about Brenda in Asheville, probably still crying, probably calling someone else now. I thought about Trisha Fields and her pearls and her cruelty catching up to her. I thought about Todd and his frozen trust fund and his collapsing reputation. I didn't feel happy about any of it, but I didn't feel guilty either. This wasn't revenge. I hadn't done anything to make this happen. This was just consequence, natural, inevitable consequence, and I wasn't responsible for fixing it. I took a sip of tea and whispered to my reflection in the window, "I chose me, and I'll keep choosing me." The city lights started to flicker on below. My apartment felt quiet and safe and mine. I was home, and I was whole. 3 months passed. I threw myself into work in a way I never had before. There was a project I'd been hesitant about, a community center in a neighborhood that had been overlooked for years. A space meant to bring people together across differences. I poured everything into it. Late nights refining designs, meetings with community leaders, revisions that felt less like work and more like purpose. In October, the design won a regional award. At the ceremony, my boss pulled me aside. "Whatever happened to you this summer, it's working. You're different, sharper, more confident." I smiled. I just figured out what I was designing for. Outside of work, I started building a life that was mine. I organized a weekly hiking group with friends. Nothing serious, just Saturday mornings on the trails outside Portland. I joined a pottery class at a community studio, my hands learning to shape clay the way New Zealand had shaped me. And I adopted a rescue dog, a scruffy terrier mix I named Koa, after the native New Zealand tree. I wasn't avoiding thoughts of Brenda. They still came, usually at unexpected moments, a song we used to sing together, a joke only she would understand. But I wasn't defined by those thoughts anymore. They were just part of my landscape, not the whole terrain. In late September, an email appeared in my inbox. Subject line, "I'm sorry." Sender, Brenda Shores. I stared at it for a full minute before opening it. The email was long, raw, in a way Brenda rarely allowed herself to be. She wrote about the months since the wedding, how Todd had become controlling, monitoring who she talked to, criticizing how she dressed, how she spoke, how Trisha called daily with complaints and demands, how the social circle she'd tried so hard to join had turned on her the moment the scandal broke, leaving her isolated and alone. She wrote about realizing, slowly and painfully, that she'd cut off everyone who truly loved her in pursuit of people who only valued her as long as she was useful. The last paragraph said, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve a response. But I need you to know you were right about everything. And I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry." I read it 3 times. Then I closed my laptop and sat with it for 2 days. On the 3rd day, I replied, "Brenda, I appreciate your honesty. I'm not ready for much more than this. But I hope you find your way. Take care of yourself." I didn't offer to meet, didn't offer to fix things, just acknowledged her and held my boundary. Over the next 2 months, Brenda sent occasional emails, not demands or pleas, just updates. She'd left Todd, moved into her own apartment, started therapy twice a week. She was working on herself, she said, not for anyone else, but because she needed to. I responded briefly, kindly. We weren't twins again, not the way we'd been, maybe not ever, but we weren't strangers either. In November, she asked, "Would you be open to a phone call, just to hear your voice?" I thought about it for a day. Then I replied, "Yes, Sunday at 3? The call was awkward at first, long pauses, careful words. Brenda didn't make excuses. I didn't offer absolution. "I'm learning who I am without trying to be what someone else wants," Brenda said, her voice quiet. "It's harder than I thought." "It is," I agreed, "but it's worth it." We talked for 20 minutes, agreed to talk again in a few weeks. No promises, no pressure. When Thanksgiving came, I decided to host. I invited Clara, Alfredo, a few coworkers, people from my hiking group. My apartment filled with mismatched chairs and potluck dishes and laughter that felt like home. An hour into dinner, the doorbell rang. I opened it, and Brenda stood there. She was holding a pie, her eyes uncertain, her posture tentative in a way I'd never seen before. "I know I wasn't invited," she said quickly, "but Alfredo mentioned you were hosting, and I wanted to see you. If that's okay. If it's not, I'll go." I looked at her, really looked at her. She'd cut her hair shorter, lost weight. There were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before. I didn't hug her, but I stepped aside. "Come in," I said. She smiled, small and grateful, and walked inside. Later, after dinner, after the dishes were cleared and people had migrated to the living room, Brenda and I stood on my balcony. The city lights shimmered below us. Inside, the warmth of chosen family hummed. Laughter, conversation, the clink of glasses. "I don't know how to be your twin anymore," Brenda said quietly, staring out at the lights. I looked at her. "Maybe we don't go back to that. Maybe we figure out something new." She turned to me, eyes searching. "What does that look like?" "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but maybe that's okay." We stood in silence, not uncomfortable, not whole, but possible. Inside, someone called my name. Koa barked. Clara laughed at something Alfredo said. "You built a good life," Brenda said softly. "I did," I agreed. "And you can too." She nodded, wiping at her eyes. "I'm trying." "I know." We went back inside together, not as the twins we'd been, but as 2 separate people, learning to build a bridge. Healing doesn't always mean going back to how things were. Sometimes it means building something completely new. If you've had to rebuild a relationship on your own terms, share your story in the comments. You might inspire someone who needs to hear it. 6 months later, I was back in New Zealand. This time, I wasn't running. I was returning. I designed a photography workshop called Finding Yourself in the Landscape, and somehow, miraculously, 12 women had signed up. We spent 2 weeks traveling the South Island, cameras in hand, learning to see light and perspective and ourselves in the wild places. On our final day, we stood at Milford Sound, the same place I'd stood a year ago, broken and searching. Now I was here teaching, sharing, helping other women find what I'd found. One of the participants, a woman named Sarah from Australia, approached me as we packed up our gear. "How did you get here?" she asked. "You seem so, at peace." I smiled. "I chose myself when no one else would." She nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. Brenda and I talked every 2 weeks now. Video calls, not texts. She was rebuilding her life. New job as a real estate agent in a different part of Asheville. A small apartment she decorated herself. Therapy twice a week that she said was harder than anything I've ever done. We weren't inseparable anymore, but we were honest. On one call, she asked about the workshop. I told her about the women, the landscapes, the feeling of coming full circle. "Do you think we'll ever be close again?" she asked, her voice small. I thought about it. "I think we'll be something better, something real." She smiled. "I'd like that." On my last night in New Zealand, I sat by Lake Tekapo again. The stars were just as breathtaking as I remembered. I opened my journal and wrote, "A year ago, I thought losing my twin meant losing myself. Now I know. I didn't lose her. I found me." I looked up at the stars, millions of them, all alone, all together, all breathtaking. I pulled out my phone and recorded a voice note, something I'd started doing for reflection. "Family isn't about who shares your blood or your birthday," I said into the quiet night. "It's about who shows up when you're breaking and who celebrates when you're whole. It's about people who choose you, again and again, not out of obligation, but out of love." Brenda and I are learning that now. We're not the twins we were. We're two separate people trying to build a bridge. And maybe that's enough. I flew back to Portland the next day. Clara picked me up from the airport with Koa in the back seat, who nearly knocked me over with excitement. My apartment smelled like the lavender candles I loved. I unpacked slowly, hanging new photos from New Zealand on my wall. One was of me, alone on a mountaintop, arms spread wide. I texted Brenda, "Home safe. Talk next week?" Her reply came immediately, "Can't wait. Love you, Anne." I smiled, typed back, "Love you too." That evening, I stood on my balcony with coffee in hand, watching the Willamette River flow. I thought about the girl who'd sat on a hotel floor in Asheville, shattered by a text message. The woman who'd dropped a stone in a geothermal spring in Rotorua. The person I was now. I used to think being a twin meant I'd never be alone. Now I know being whole means I never have to be. I pulled out my phone and posted a photo on Instagram. It was recent. Brenda and me at Thanksgiving, standing side by side but not matching. Different haircuts, different clothes, different smiles. The caption read, "We're not the same person. We never were. And that's okay." Comments flooded in within minutes. Support, love, people sharing their own stories of rebuilding relationships, of choosing themselves, of learning that family is something you build, not just something you're born into. I read a few, then close the app. I looked out at my city, my life, my choice. Koa nudged my leg, wanting attention. I bent down and scratched behind his ears. "We're good, buddy," I said. "We're really good." The sun set over Portland, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Inside my apartment, the photos from New Zealand caught the light. Outside, the river kept flowing, constant and sure. I'd spent 29 years thinking I was half of something. Now I knew the truth. Being a twin doesn't mean you're half of something. It means you're whole, twice, and I was finally, completely, unapologetically whole. If this story touched your heart, reminded you that choosing yourself isn't selfish, or gave you the courage to set a boundary you've been afraid to set, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is show others that healing is possible. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.